Well, we have with us former Senator Tom Coburn. He's the author of a new book called Smashing the D.C. Monopoly. He joins us now from Washington with more, and we welcome to the 700 Club. Senator, it's good to have you with us. Thank you for being here.
Well, Pat, it's great to be with you. Thank you.
Look, what do you think of this tax bill that they just put through the Congress?
I think it's going to do remarkable things for the economy. There isn't a tax bill that's ever been passed that everybody likes. But in the long run, this is going to be very, very beneficial in terms of job creation, in terms of raising wages for middle income and lower middle income families. It's going to put more capital investment into our country, which is going to create more jobs and more opportunity. I think it's long overdue. I'm very thankful that they're passing it. I would have done some things different. I'd have paid for a portion of it. There's plenty of waste in Washington where they could have eliminated it, to where we didn't pass any of the cost of this on. But other than that, I think it's going to be a great thing because the optimism is coming back in America. There's some actual visionary leadership now that people want to see us succeed, want to see us get ahead.
I keep asking myself, how come the Democrats as a body oppose? There wasn't one Democrat voted in favor of this thing. What's wrong with them?
Well, Pat, it's the typical politics. It's all about next year's election. How do we make everything that the party in power does, how do we make it look bad? I mean, you can find things to complain about in this tax bill, but overall, you can't find things to complain about in terms of returning taxes to the American people. It's really quite ironic. I hardly ever got anybody on the other side of the aisle to help me cut spending. And one of their criticism is they said we didn't cut any spending to pay for it. Well, they certainly didn't lead on that, nor have they ever. And so it's all politics. And that's what America's sick of. They're sick of looking at the harping. What they want is real visionary leadership. They want people to get the right things and work on the hard things, like Social Security and Medicare, balancing the budget, not transferring debts to our kids. It's immoral. And I think you're seeing some of that leadership now in the Republican Party.
Your book is very intriguing. You said we're going to beat the system here. What are you proposing? You're talking about a constitutional convention and changing the Constitution. Could you elaborate on that?
Sure. It's actually not a constitutional convention. It's called a Convention of Amendments. It's a very limited gathering of the states. All states are involved in it. But to do that, you have to have 34 states that make the application and work on three areas. One, forcing fiscal responsibility on the federal government, make them live within their means, make them make the hard choices that they refuse to do, and I'm talking about the politicians. Number two, limit the scope and jurisdiction of the federal government to bring back more power, more liberty, more decision-making to the states. And then finally, limit the terms on both appointed and elected officials so that we don't have the careerism that's given us the $144 trillion in unfunded liabilities. So it's very straightforward. It's very simple. It was done as a routine matter before we had the Constitutional Convention. Matter of fact, a convention of states actually pulled together in Annapolis, which is what caused the Constitutional Convention to happen in the first place. And it's also very safe because the members who are sent as delegates from each of the states have to follow what their states have told them to do. And for example, people who are worried about that, Indiana made it a felony not to follow what your state directed you to do in this amendments convention. So it's about restoring the Constitution, not really changing it. It's about putting it back where it was intended to be by our founders in the first place and letting more decision-making, more freedom, more liberty be felt, had, and acted upon by the citizens in the states. And that's what was intended to begin with.
Well, do you think that the Congress is going to do something that will essentially take away their power and their long-term tenure? Do you think they're willing to go along with that?
No. The Congress isn't going to do anything, and that's what's great about this. The Congress doesn't have anything to do with this. This is the states When 34 states call for this amendments convention, the only thing Congress has to do with it is say, here's where you'll meet, here's the funds to operate it, and oh, by the way, our clerks, once you've passed any recommendations to the states, which then 38 states have to agree to, once you've done that, then we'll send them to the states. And then, then it's up to the states to decide if they want to put term limits on their members or if they think the Congress ought to live within a balanced budget scenario, live within their means. If the states think that our members of Congress ought to have to make the hard choices rather than continually kick the can down the road at the jeopardy of the living standard of our kids and grandkids.
Well, we've got that $20 trillion thing looming. But that's not the total. I mean, there are unfunded liabilities. How big are they in your opinion?
The unfunded liabilities right now are $124 trillion. So you add $20 trillion of debt and $124 trillion in unfunded liabilities. What you tell the millennial generation is each year you're going to have to come up with $30,000 in either decreased standard of living, inflation, or payments of debt, just to keep even with where we are today. That's not counting any money that we might spend on Social Security and Medicare in the future after that 50 years.
Well, Senator, if we get our interest rates on our federal debt anywhere close to the market, that'll consume the debt. The interest on that'll consume everything the government has to spend, won't it?
Well, interest, Social Security, and Medicare will consume 100% of the budget.
And that's it. Well, what about discretionary spending? They won't have any of that.
Well, there won't be any because there won't be any money. The question is how long will the rest of the world continue to loan us money at the rates that we're seeing today? And when they won't and when that stops, that's when everything starts falling apart. So why wait till that climactic moment? Why not do something now? Okay. And so the question I'm asking as I go around the country, I've been in 32 states this year, is what do you think is going to change Congress to start making the hard choices to fix the future? And of course, nothing will. And so what I tell people is here's a convention of states that has limited authority to make amendments in 3 areas and offer them back to the states for their approval. If you have an idea to fix our country that's better than that, I'll come help you. What I want is a future for our children and our grandchildren. And I would say this, it is highly immoral to steal from your unborn children.
There ain't any question.
And that's what we're doing in this country.
Well, now, just to clarify, what procedures do you go through to get all this accomplished? What's step 1, 2, 3 to get it done? Go ahead.
I'd be happy to answer that. The first step is to write an application to Congress that says what you would like to have a convention of states on. And we have a standard one that considers the 3 things that I mentioned. Limit the scope and jurisdiction, fiscal responsibility, i.e. a balanced budget amendment, and limit the terms. Then you have to have 34 states that pass that out of their state legislators. Governors don't have anything to do with it. And those states make application. As soon as there's 34 there, the Congress certifies and sets a date for a meeting of all 50 states to consider only those 3 things. And then once those 3 things have been considered and recommended amendments to the Constitution are made, the Congress then forwards those to the states for ratifications. There's 7 years that are allowed for these amendments to be looked at and either voted up or down. For it to pass, for it to become a constitutional amendment, like a balanced budget amendment, would require 38 states to say, yes, we agree to that. And then that becomes part of our Constitution. That becomes the founding fundamental guidepost for Congress living within its means, which they don't and refuse to. And it doesn't matter which party's in charge, none of them live within the means.
All right, give me your odds of having that done. I mean, it's a relatively simple thing, but you've got to have those legislators want to do it. Do you think that they'll go along with that?
Well, the state legislators are. We have 12 states that have already passed it. We have 3.6 million volunteers in the United States right now. We have a district captain in every legislative district in the country. I think we'll pass 8 more states this year. during this. That'll put us at 20. And I think over the next 2 or 3 years, we'll get to 34 states. And as we do that, then Congress is going to start looking over its shoulder and say, well, maybe we ought to pass a balanced budget amendment. Maybe we don't want that. Maybe we ought to live within our means. Maybe we ought to downsize the federal government's role and let the states start making more decisions for themselves. And as that happens, and maybe we ought to pass term limits. And if they were to do those things, we wouldn't care if there wasn't an amendments convention. But the fact is they're not going to. Here's the question that Colonel George Mason made during the Constitutional Convention. He said, when in history do you know a time that the central government has voluntarily ceded power back to its people? And of course, it's never happened in history. So this Congress isn't going to restore the relationship between a limited government and what's called federalism of the states. They're going to take more and more power towards Washington. And what we need is more and more power moved back to the states where you can actually have an impact on it, and those people making those decisions you can actually talk to. So the likelihood of Congress doing this is zero, and the likelihood of us as American citizens making the decision on who decides our future comes back to us. And I think that's going to happen. It's going to happen within the next 4 to 5 years.
Senator, that could save this country. Really, it could, because otherwise, the way we're going now, there seems to be no political will, as you say, to rein in spending. During Obama, it just went crazy, and it's still going up. Nothing's stopping that. So this could save the country. Am I overstating it?
Sure. No, Pat. There's $400 billion a year documented by the Government Accountability Office of waste, duplication, and fraud in the federal government right now. Right now. One of the reasons I left Congress early is because I couldn't get anybody to help me get rid of that. I mean, we know where it is. There's multiple duplicative programs that all do the same thing, running in multiple different agencies, and nobody wants to get rid of one of them. And none of them have any outcomes that are worthy of the amount of money that we put into them.
Yeah.
So where's the leadership to make the hard choices? It's not here. And so the whole idea is to force that leadership to live within their means, and number two, transfer those decisions where at least in Oklahoma we could lobby our state legislature and say, we don't want you spending that money that way.
Well, Senator,
So I think it's going to happen. I think we can save our country. I think we can cheat history, Pat. Every other republic before us has died. And they died over the same reasons that we're starting to go down the tubes as far as economics. And we can cheat history. And we should do it, and it takes real leadership, real courage by the American people to do it. They can help us by going to conventionofstates.com and signing up and becoming a volunteer. They can read this book so they can have a full understanding of what we're trying to do. We're not trying to have a constitutional convention. We're trying to restore the Constitution to what it was.
Cheat history, I like it. Senator Coburn, thank you for being with us. And
you bet. God bless you, man.
God bless you. Smashing the D.C. monopoly, Tom Coburn, M.D., Senator Coburn, he was a fiscal hawk of the first order, and this is interesting, isn't it?
Fascinating. I didn't know this was all going on.
Well, I didn't realize it had gotten this far, but I mean, it could save our democracy, and this is important. God bless you. All right, that was wonderful. All right, that's a good way to start the new year. All right, Wendy, hey, by the way, you are looking fabulous for Christmas.
Well, thank you. Red is my favorite color, and this is the season to wear it.
It's beautiful. All right.
Thanks, Pat. Well, up next, a bombshell new report, and it reveals how the Obama administration stopped an investigation into the terrorists of Hezbollah. We'll have the details and the rest of today's top headlines. That's coming up next.
In theaters right now.
Everybody listen up.
Meet the animals behind the greatest story ever told.
I carried a king on my back.
And come celebrate.
It's the wise man.
The real reason for the season.
His name is Jesus.
For the newborn king. The Star, rated PG.
There were so many issues in my bag.
Pretty much had shut me down.
I couldn't even stand up straight.
After going to Laser Spine Institute, I can't tell you how much happier I am.
After years of living with chronic back pain, I finally found the answer.
Call Laser Spine Institute, the leader in minimally invasive spine surgery, to learn how you can get lasting relief from chronic neck and back pain, all with a less than 1-inch incision. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with spinal stenosis, bulging or herniated disc, sciatica, or other chronic spine conditions, call today for your no-cost MRI review.
After surgery, I was so surprised that I could walk the next day and walk without pain. It was amazing.
If you've been told you might need neck or back surgery, call 1-844-520-BACK now for your no-cost MRI review.
Calling Laser Spine Institute was the best decision I've ever made.
I can lift up my 3-year-old, run and play, and they help me get my life back.
Laser Spine Institute, a less than 1-inch incision, a lifetime of standing tall.
They've been translating the Bible for 75 years.
God has it all planned out.
Now they're bringing the gospel to one of the largest unreached groups in the world.
This creates a lot of context.
Plus,
this is truly our Christmas story.
And it's one that played out across many years.
I knew that God had heard my prayer.
A mom-to-be holds on to a decades-old promise.
I cannot and will not leave this sanctuary until I hear from you.
On the next 700 Club.
Welcome back to the 700 Club. The U.S. will be, quote, taking names. That's the warning United Nations Ambassador Nikki Haley made ahead of a General Assembly vote on Jerusalem tomorrow. The United Nations is holding an emergency session to vote on a resolution condemning President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and plans to relocate the U.S. embassy there. Haley has been aggressively vocal about the United Nations' bias against Israel. She said on Twitter, "When we make a decision at the will of the American people about where to locate our embassy, we don't expect those we've helped to target us." Haley had to use the United States veto power Monday to block a Security Council resolution designed to reverse Trump's Jerusalem announcement. And Pat, every member nation voted for it, including close American allies like the United Kingdom.
Well, you know, I think we've got to recognize, ladies and gentlemen, the United States pays the number is somewhere between 25 and 30%. I don't have the exact figures, but it's a huge amount of money that we spend every year on funding the United Nations. If we withdraw our funding, that organization will dry up or they'll have to change their ways. And I think what Nikki Haley, she's a courageous lady, and I'm all for her. And to say, it's the old thing, look, we're going to take names. All right, you vote against this and you keep doing that and you vote against Israel. It's our sovereign decision. We'll put our embassy where we jolly well please. And Israel has the right to name what its capital is. Can you imagine us going to some other country and telling them where they can announce their capital and to tell another nation where it can put its embassy? Can you imagine anybody interfering in the affairs of Germany, say, or France? And to think the United Nations can do that to us? And Nikki Haley says, look, you're living on our dime. We're paying the bills for you and your wasteful employees, the UN. They are fat cats. They live on a much higher level of salary than our diplomats do in the State Department. And why should we continue to subsidize that stuff? And I think President Trump is getting ready to pull the drawstring on the purse strings that have been opened so much to this group. And I think it's time to get after them. And Nikki Haley, God bless you, you're terrific. All right, John, what do you have?
Pat, the Obama administration chose to give Iran a nuclear deal instead of targeting terrorists. An investigation by Politico reveals the administration derailed a massive investigation of Hezbollah just to keep Iran on board. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration started its investigation in 2008 when the DEA realized the Iran-backed terrorist group was launching into international crime, including global drug trafficking. Federal agents tracked Hezbollah's drugs and money laundering, which in some cases involved shipping American cars to Africa. They also uncovered the innermost circle of the terror group. But to appease Iran and complete the nuclear deal, the Obama administration threw up roadblocks to cripple the investigation.
We need a full investigation of what the Obama administration did to not proceed ahead with the investigation of Hezbollah. And they were converging in on some of the very leading officials with Hezbollah, and with that they were prevented from going forward. And a lot of roadblocks were put in the way because they didn't want to do anything that would discourage that Iran agreement.
Congressman Pittenger also told CBN News the move kept the United States from dismantling a major terrorist operation. Well, Christianity came to Iraq's Nineveh plain shortly after Christ's resurrection, but ISIS did its best to wipe the descendants of those ancient Christians off the face of the earth. Paul Strand spoke with a father and son who survived that genocide, now in America, and helping to put a face to those who've been persecuted.
Imagine you're this young lad, Noah Bain, and ISIS troops are about to invade your town, and you're well aware they'll likely kill you and most everyone you know. That's what the 8 members of Noah's family awoke to one night in 2014.
We were all afraid as we heard that ISIS heading towards our town. We were all scared.
Kristen Wright of the ministry Open Doors told CBN News the troops protecting Noah's town of Karamalis fled before ISIS. Christians there survived only because priests in the town's Chaldean church went door to door and warned everyone in the night to quickly evacuate.
Of course, we were very scared as I grabbed all my family together, tried to put them all quickly in the car and hid outside the town.
Gunfire crackled around them and bullets flew as the Christians raced into the night. Now with ISIS's recent defeat, Noah's family has been able to return, but only to find most of their home ransacked and destroyed.
We were very happy as we returned to our hometown, but at the same time, it's hurt us to see our house burned along with other people's. As we returned, I was going back to my home and I saw it all burn. I felt very sad because it was brand new. We just built it in and it's all burned.
But Noah is ready to make a life of it again in this town upon the Nineveh plain where Christians still speak Aramaic, the language Jesus spoke. Noah's still deciding on his future profession.
Either a soccer player or a teacher.
The family could well have lost their lives and did lose most of their worldly possessions and spent years in a refugee camp. It's been a hard test, but
absolutely did not affect us. Instead, that make us stronger in our faith.
Open Doors Kristen Wright says American Christians could learn a thing or two from their persecuted brothers and sisters in Christ she's met all over the world.
I have been absolutely had my heart broken by seeing the pain of what Christians have endured, but I've also been absolutely stunned at the joy that they have in the midst of it and the strength that they have found. And so I think that there's hope in the midst of despair, even for Christians in the Middle East right now. And that's why they need our prayers and our action more than ever before.
Critics sometimes poo-poo Christians meeting every crisis with prayer, but Kristen says it really matters.
Personally, when I've been to Iraq, I have met with church leaders who told me that they could feel the prayers of Christians around the world.
Noah asked people to keep praying for him, and he'll return the favor.
And we as well pray for them to live in peace in their homes.
And so prayer is definitely important, but I wouldn't stop there.
She says giving to help people like Noah is always appreciated.
We're currently rebuilding homes along the Nineveh plain as Christians are moving back.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Paul and Pat, experts and human rights watchers are saying that we're witnessing the elimination of ancient Christian communities that date back to New Testament times.
Well, this is one of the shocking things that we've allowed to happen. And ISIS was evil, is evil. And what they have done is evil. And they have systematically begun to commit genocide against Christian populations. But anyhow, there's some semblance of restoration. I got a letter from General Garner, about what's happening with the Kurds. They are our staunch allies in the Middle East. They have fought against ISIS. Their Peshmerga has fought side by side by the forces of America and other freedom-loving people. And unfortunately, the Trump administration has ignored them and left them at the fate of the government in Iraq, which is pro-Iranian. And it looks as if there might be something to restore that. And I'm just praying the president will begin to understand how important those Kurds are to us and what wonderful people they are. And I think something like that will happen. But this has been genocide. And we have to stand for those who shared the faith and loved the Lord and stood up against torture and terrorism and pressure and murder and all the other things. Wendy, what's next?
Well, coming up, your questions, honest answers. One viewer asks, how will the new tax bill help a 78-year-old woman? Pat weighs in on that and much more when we come back.
Still ahead, a routine checkup reveals something terribly wrong.
My heart sank.
Their child had a fatal condition.
Every time he kicked, I had no clue if it was going to be the last.
And these parents had to prep for the worst.
I was preparing to deliver a baby that wasn't alive.
Watch a miracle unfold.
We still clung to hope.
Later on today's show.
How can I help you today?